everyone just joining in. Thanks for hopping onto our event. We're going to get started really soon. But for now, as you can see on the screen, there are instructions to submit an answer to our poll question. And what you're seeing on the screen right now is a live feedback of what everyone else is kind of saying. So just yeah.
All right, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thanks for coming in. For those of you just coming in, feel free to fill out the question and kind of get, your thoughts rolling about why it's important for South Asians to vote in the upcoming election. And we'll just go over some ground rules as we're waiting for people to come in. So we do have a lot of speakers to get through today. So we're hoping to save all questions till the end, send them in the chat, and we'll have one of our facilitators take note of it. And then we'll ask specific questions at the end. We have a lot of speakers, so make sure you keep yourself muted. And I think that is about it. Feroza will be leading our conversation today, so I'll pass it on to her. Feroza?
Hey guys, I am Feroza Syed. I'm a trans activist and advocate located in the Atlanta area. Sometimes I act, and with a lot of Photoshop, I might model. Just an FYI. I am honored to be asked to help kind of moderate the conversation today. As Patricia just mentioned, we really do have a lot of people to go through. So today's kind of formatting is going to be that we're going to go through each section of different folks, the cast of Family Karma, cast of Indian Matchmaking, the Jikaria Sisters, etc., and give about 6 minutes or so for people to answer some questions and talk about certain things. And then as we go through to the end, as Patricia mentioned, we will answer some questions. So I am going to start off with the amazing cast of Bravo's Family Karma. Shaan, Anisha, and Amrit, if you guys can all unmute yourselves. One of the things that we wanted to know from you guys is why the South Asian and Asian American vote are so crucial and such a crucial demographic in this particular election.
Well, thank you for having us. And I'll say, first of all, Asian Americans are the fastest growing segment in, the group of eligible voters within ethnic groups in the country. The number has more than doubled since 2000 to 2020. And we never had, Asians in popular culture and media as much as we do now. So this group that we're in didn't even exist last year. And more than 11 million of us will be able to vote this year. And I'm going to pass it on to Amrit.
Hey everyone, it's Amrit from Family Karma. Listen, thank you guys for hosting this. It's such an important event, it's such an important message, and it's such an important conversation. So just following up to what Anisha said, so we are the fastest growing ethnic group in this country. Unfortunately, though, we are also the group with the lowest percentage of voter turnout. And this is despite the fact that in the 2016 presidential election, our ethnic group had the largest uptake of new voters that were able to vote. And this was the largest uptick since the Bush-Gore race in 2000. No other such ethnic group has seen such a large increase in voters in 2016. That being said, we had the lowest turnout. So all of this sort of results in the very important conclusion that we really need to encourage our friends, our neighbors, our family members, peers, colleagues, whether they're South Asian or not, to go out and vote in November. We should really be having stronger numbers with voter turnout given how large our population group is. And then I'm going to do Shaan Patel for some additional information.
Hey guys, my name is Shaan Patel. What I was going to say is, as Asian American voters become more prominent, especially in swing states like Nevada, North Carolina, Georgia, Texas, Florida, Pennsylvania, Michigan, the things that we care about as a voting bloc are going to become more important as well. As we have power federally to change elections, people who are in those positions of power because of us are going to have to listen to what we have to say. It's more important than ever right now to organize, not just so our voices are heard on, in an election, but so it can continue to be heard the year after the election in the legislature. The things that we are able to achieve when it comes to electoral turnout can translate to actual policies and advocacy being passed. That's why orgs like this, like Desi Blue, is important. It's not just because, it's an election year. It's because it's about building political power as a group, just think about you sitting at home. What issues do you care about? Whether it be the Supreme Court or a cost of an education or small business taxes, whatever it is that you care about, imagine being able to advocate for it with a block of voters that can swing an election. That has, great power. And I think the importance of the Indian vote and AAPI vote, if it is organized and if it can advocate as a group, is going to be more and more powerful going forward. But it starts now, like this year. If you have time, join a local campaign, try one day of phone banking, share what you like about a local candidate, on your Instagram feed, commit to voting with 3 of your friends, make them come with you and have a ballot filling out party at home for your absentee ballots. Make sure you request an absentee ballot and, just get out and be part of the conversation and be part of this cycle, because I think it's the beginning of a surge of power and clout for Asian American voters, especially Indian American voters. So that's all I got to say.
That was amazing. Does anybody have anything to add? All right. Well, we will chug it along to our next group, Vinny, Kiran, and Ritesh, which are all South Asian actors and actresses. We would like to know from you guys why voting down the ballot matters and not just the presidency.
So, am I unmuted? There we go.
Thanks.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm Ritesh. So voting down the ballot, I guess I'll kick it off. Why it's important, instead of just focusing not only on this presidency, we need to be focusing on all elections, local, because most cause and effect is going to happen at the local level. Things that are going to directly affect you immediately is probably happening within your community right now. So whether that's, mayors, governors, you're looking at local taxes, education funding, funding for infrastructure, funding for resources such as healthcare and police, which are going to be, very, very important topics on a national scale. It all starts kind of like on the local scale. So you want to make sure that you're informed to cause that change in a progressive way happening on a local scale, because eventually that'll trickle down or trickle up to a national scale. So.
You were like supposed to hand it off. Now I'm just.
Oh, Vinny, I'm sorry. I didn't know who was next. I can't see you. There's too many people.
That's true.
Which is a good thing. It's a great turnout. So let me formally pass it to my friend.
Nice.
Vinny, it's all yours.
One of the things that Tish just talked about was obviously local politics and how important that is. And I think a couple of ways we can look at it practically is what's going on in Kentucky. The attorney general in Kentucky was elected by less than, I think it was like 55%. Or if you're looking at healthcare and governors that believe in science and governors that don't. But you see what real-time effects of what's happening to people, or climate change. Whether people believe it or not, it's going to affect your community, and the community has a really, really big say in how they operate. And I think Kiran has some much more intelligent things to say.
Vinny, always more intelligent. I mean, I would say that for me, we were talking yesterday, and part of the reason that I wanted to do this is this, like, I think South Asians as a voting bloc are just so incredibly educated. But even like, I have a cousin, I was talking to him a couple days ago, and he was like, oh, I didn't vote in the last election. And I don't know what that disconnect is or why that's happening. But that's incredibly worrying to me. And I think it's so important that we galvanize and we make sure that our voices are heard, specifically because there isn't maybe the representation. It's like, the one thing is that we are a part of this nation. So whether you need to, like, everyone needs to see themselves as an American citizen and as, you know, a person who has like a right to have a voice in this country. And this is the way to have that voice in this country in a really tangible way that goes beyond just like your particular family or, you know, what you're doing in your own life. And this is part of like civic engagement and responsibility on both, you know, a local level and a national level. And it starts at the local level because that's where you're going to have the most impact. And I think, you know, we've seen that with somebody like AOC coming out as a Democratic incumbent. We're going to see the impact in terms of every like Black Lives Matter case is being tried by, you know, those are all like local. Those are all local in terms of the grand juries and who those attorney generals are in places. So this is really the modicum of one thing that we can do. And I know so many South Asians are engaged in terms of, you know, on social media and stuff, but we want to make sure that translates into tangible power. And this is really the way to do it.
Just wanted to add one thing was when we're talking about down the ballot, we're also seeing the effects of that with Supreme Court right now, right? Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
We are seeing it, and it has continued to really has affected and will continue to affect the lives we're going to be living for the next at least 70 years. So what's happening there is that senators, those are state politics. That's down the ballot. You couldn't get Merrick Garland confirmed because people didn't necessarily vote down the ballot. And instead, we now have two, possibly three Supreme Court seats that are being filled by a party that does not represent a majority of the country. So when we talk about down the ballot, that's another thing that I think it's important to recognize. And that's
I absolutely agree with.
Up for. We can flip the Senate, we can flip the House, we can take the White House and actually start to affect real change. But if we don't vote down the ballot, we don't know.
Agreed with all of you guys. Thank you so much. As somebody who lives in a swing state, I 100% agree with you guys because what's happening on the federal level if I was in California, I would definitely have more rights as a trans person than I do in Georgia. So it is very much a down ballot kind of situation. I agree with you guys 100%. Our next round of speakers is Shayan and Kajal. So if our panelists can unmute themselves.
Before we do that, I just wanted to interject with one of the questions that was put in the chat that a lot of people are curious about. So if the panelists want to weave this into their answers, it's a question about talking about BLM and colorism in the South Asian communities with our aunties and uncles, especially if they're not willing to have those conversations. So how are you starting conversations within your own families in addition to the questions that Feroza will share with you? So just wanted to add that.
Absolutely. So as we're going through, if you guys want to add commentary on that in this particular environment, we're finding that there's a lot of intersectionality, and speaking about how we're looping in different movements and being better allies and advocates for all is really, really important. Shayan and Kajal, I think that we wanted to talk to you guys just a hair about a registration plan, voting, roadblocks to voting, and also post offices and kind of some of the issues that we're seeing there. Can you guys go in, and I'll pass it off to Shayan first.
Sure. Actually, I think Kajal's going to start us off, and then I will take it from there. No problem.
Hi, this is Kajal. So this is my first year of being able to vote at a presidential election, as it probably is for a lot of you listening in. And I think the responsibility and privilege of being able to vote carries a certain kind of anxiety, especially with what's at stake at this election and the circumstances under which this election is happening. I think it's definitely valid to feel that kind of stress. And you know, if you're active on social media or you read the news, you can probably relate to this feeling of information overload that comes with seeing a new infographic or article every day talking about how voting is different this year and all the different obstacles there are to, you know, having your voice being heard at this election. And I think the best way to alleviate some of that anxiety is by creating and defining a voting plan for yourself. So the information, the restrictions, the deadlines, and the facts, they're all out there, they're all available to you, and creating a voting plan is about, you know, being proactive and making sure that you are taking those steps that you need to make sure your vote is counted in 2020, because we all know how incredibly important every single vote is this year especially. So Shayan, do you want to talk about, you know, how to start that process of building a voting plan?
Yes, of course. So yes, this making a plan situation, if you feel like you don't know where to start, this is why we are here, and we're here to help you walk you through that. So step one is figuring out if you are registered to vote. That is the main step that you need to check. It's very easy, very simple. Honestly, I checked if I was registered to vote like 4 times during the pandemic just because I was bored, and it took all of 30 seconds because a pop-up showed up on Instagram. Very quick and easy, but you can also check on vote.org. You just fill in your name, your address, your email, and it tells you right away. After you've done that, the next step is understanding the ballot. I know it can feel overwhelming and you have no idea what's going on. There are a lot of resources that you can check out, and I'm sure they'll put them up in the email that they're going to send out later. But there's a lot of resources you can check out to understand what's happening on the ballot, how to fill out a ballot properly, because it's very easy for some little tiny mistake, a misprint, one wrong line in the wrong corner for it to not get counted. So all of that information will be available and is very easily accessible. The next thing to check is, what is your most optimal way to vote? There are 3 different options you have. You can either go in person to a voting location, but obviously considering COVID, a lot of states are requiring / allowing you to vote from home. So that's something that you can just register for an absentee ballot, super easy, vote.org, 1-minute process, and they will mail you your ballot home. After you've done that, you have 2 options. You can either drop it off to a polling location that's nearest to you, or you can send it through the post office, mailing it through the post office. And finally, another main thing to make sure based off of the state that you are in is checking the voting rules and deadlines. It's all different for every single state. There's some have more restrictions than the other. I alert to tell me all my voting updates. And yeah, I think we're gonna have Kajal go through a couple of the roadblocks and restrictions that you may face.
Yeah, so I'm going to briefly get into some of the things that you need to look out for when you're requesting a mail-in ballot and, you know, making sure that your ballot counts. But the number one thing that I want you to take away from this is that you should do your research on your state, its restrictions and its deadlines, and do that research as soon as possible. So this map shows the mail-in voting rules by state, and it kind of splits up states into 4 groups based on how you can request a ballot, whether the ballot is automatically sent to you, whether you need to request an application. So definitely check your state, check what the regulations are. And yeah, I saw a question in the chat about trying to reconcile between voting in person versus making sure your vote gets counted if you do a mail-in vote. And I think the number one thing is to make sure that, one, you look at your state deadlines, and you try to avoid the little technicalities that have gotten hundreds of thousands of votes, not counted in the past. A couple of them I will touch on now. So if you live in Pennsylvania, this is a big one. Your ballot will come with 3 parts. So you'll get the ballot itself, you'll get a secrecy ballot with official election ballot printed on it, and you'll get an outer envelope that you have to put both the ballot and the secrecy ballot in, and you have to sign it, and that just makes sure that they can verify that you are responsible for that ballot. And the state Supreme Court ruled last week that if you don't properly fill out that envelope, and if you don't send back all 3 components, or you send in a quote unquote naked ballot, then your ballot's not going to be counted. So that is a simple, easy mistake that you can make if you're just being careless, that can have major consequences. So make sure you're reading your ballot properly, avoid little errors like stray pen marks, and check your state's mail-in deadlines. And they're different for each state. There are a bunch of resources available on the internet that tell you exactly what the rules are for your state and how to make sure that, you're doing everything you can to get your vote counted. And yeah, anything that would make your ballot not automatically counted and have to be hand counted puts you at the risk of your vote not being counted. And rejected ballots are a serious concern because they raise the potential for many people to be disenfranchised. And I cannot emphasize enough how much every single vote counts. And, it's up to us at this point to be proactive and build the plans that ensure we're doing everything we can to have our voices be heard at this election. Cheyenne, do you want to finish off?
So much, Shayan and Kajal. As you guys just mentioned, Shayan, it's so important to check your status as somebody who lives in Georgia. We are wrought with voter suppression and people getting pulled off of our polls. So it's very, very important for us to check our status. Thank you guys so much for that amazing information.
I just had one quick thing to throw in, actually 2 quick things, was make sure that if you are someone that that you can't send in your ballot in person and you are using the post office as your option, that you make sure that the signatures that you have on your ballot and outside on the envelope match your driver's license. That is such a small thing. Sometimes we don't think about that. Like, we've signed our driver's license way back when, and we're like, I want a cooler signature, and now we have something different, and now your vote doesn't count. Simple things like that. But if you are using the post office as an option, just remember that the post office has so many new regulations set by the Postmaster General, and because of the pandemic, it is running at a much slower pace. It is not the same that it was before all of this happened. So in order to plan all of that, give yourself enough time to stand in long lines, deal with whatever that is. It may take extra time, but at the end of the day, your vote is going to be counted. And you just want to make sure, again, key critical is that you're doing all of this early, voting early and sending your ballot in early. That's how we can make sure that our result is in on time, since our president questioned that, But,
absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much, Shayan.
To figure out how to talk to parents about all of these issues, feel free to message me separately. I don't want to take all the time, but I've definitely had to deal with that and found some ways around it. So.
Absolutely. And in Georgia, we also have ballot boxes, so you can drop them off directly there rather than sending them through the mail, and make sure your postage is correct. We are going to move into LGBTQ activists. So we have today Lana and Aruna Rao from Desi Rainbow Parents. If you guys can unmute yourselves. So if you guys could kind of elaborate a little bit on what the LGBTQ community is facing currently, and why it's important for that segment of the population to go out and vote, and some of the issues that are affecting the community, that would be great. Lana?
There we go. Okay, sorry about that. I was trying to unmute. Yeah, so, I mean, this current political climate that we're in is a time that we see more than ever that we need to be going out to vote, because simple things is like the Equality Act. We're seeing that, sorry about that. We're seeing that the simple human rights are being taken away from folks, that, the healthcare opportunities and access to care are things that we really need to be fighting for right now, because we have an administration that does not see us in our humanity. And so this is the year now more than ever to like go out and vote. Not only do we have to look at things as like the military ban for trans folks, or healthcare for the LGBT community, especially within trans healthcare, and having folks have the ability to go out and be rejected by providers who deny folks based off of, sorry, I'm getting all the calls today, based off of religious freedom. And so we need to now more than ever, like, go out and vote, register to vote, and make your voices be heard.
Absolutely. Aruna, do you want to come
Sure.
in?
Yeah, I noticed a lot of questions regarding the auntie uncle demographic, and as an auntie myself, I can say that the thing that actually might work with parents and elders in the community is focusing on what exactly it is that they passionately care about that relates to their family. For instance, I'm a single issue voter. As a parent of a trans kid, for me, this is the fundamental issue in this election. I'm looking at the fact that in the past year, there have been an extraordinary number of bills passed all over the United States that really focus on restricting access to healthcare, as Lana mentioned, excluding trans people from athletics, banning gender marker changes in birth certificates. These are all fundamental issues for the trans community. I also want to point out that the trans and gender nonconforming community is particularly vulnerable with regards to mental health. And I think the last survey that was taken in 2015 showed that 51% of trans, I think it was teens at that point, attempted suicide. So there are huge needs in the LGBTQ community. And what I am really compelled by is the fact that I looked at the two party platforms, the Democratic Party platform and the Republican platform. The Republican one hasn't been changed since 2016. And it basically says that they are for traditional marriage between a man and a woman. That's all they say with regards to LGBTQ rights. The Democratic Party platform promises to pass the Equality Act, which will ensure equal rights in multiple spaces. And that will make all the difference, because right now, in spite of the fact that the Supreme Court is now dealt with employment discrimination for LGBTQ folks, there is still discrimination in housing, in public accommodations, access to credit, education. There's a whole range of areas where the LGBTQ community is essentially not able to access what every other citizen can. And to me, this is the question of my child, of all trans people. There is a huge need for this information to get out there. So I think if you can identify for your auntie or your uncle or your parent something that they care about, which is typically family. So talk about racism or healthcare or whatever it is that deeply impacts your family, and get us out there to vote. I promise you we'll do it.
That was amazing. As somebody who's a part of the trans community, and before I move into the next group, I am going to say this is a really great space in which, where we were just talking about supporting, Blackness and people of different races and elevating, being a good ally. 26 plus, mostly trans women of color, Black trans women have been murdered this year, and this is during a global pandemic, guys. So this is one of the spaces where intersectionality of race and gender identity and all of that overlaps to create specifically much more difficult situations for people who happen to be of a different race. And we sit in a space of privilege here as folks who happen to be Asian, South Asian. So using our voice to be allies and pushing Black trans lives forward is very, very, very important when we're going out and speaking. Absolutely. I am going to move along to...
I think we have a little bit of announcement. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry about that. I think we kind of got off schedule here, but really quick, I just wanted to go back to what Shayan and Kajal were talking about making a voter registration plan. And today we actually have a guest from South Asians Vote. You guys probably saw her Instagram story template on National Voter Registration Day. It kind of went viral. So today we have Nandini from South Asians Vote kind of talking about how to make a voter registration plan. Nandini?
Okay, can you guys hear me now? Yes, okay. Hi guys, thanks so much for having me. I promise this will be quick because, well, one, I don't know how I can follow Aruna Auntie, honestly. And so I will, and we have such great content, but yeah, I'm part of South Asians Vote. I'm one of the co-leads, and we were founded to really be a nonpartisan resource. So I saw some questions from folks about, you know, if they don't feel comfortable with a certain candidate or a certain party, we want to be a resource for anybody and everybody and help cut through the noise. So we created a website and a set of resources to help you do exactly that and work through your plan. So like Shayan and Kajal mentioned, you should register. So we have tools to actually register directly on our site, and it literally takes 2 to 3 minutes. Like, I promise you, it isn't much longer than this. I literally did it myself a couple weeks ago. It is really quickly. You can also check your status, which I recommend doing because you can never be too sure. Like, check it twice. There's no harm in doing so. And also there are tools to register by mail. So something that I would recommend, especially with your relatives, if you have any relatives who, you know, they aren't necessarily, you know, great with technology and whatnot, there are options to do so. And you can do that. We have those forms directly on our site, both in English, in Hindi, Bengali, and I think in Arabic as well. So if you need those tools, they're readily there. And then creating a plan. So I'm not going to spend too much time on that specifically, just because those ladies talk through so much of that really well. But we're giving you guys resources to do exactly that. So if you come to South Asians Vote, you can really kind of tick through everything that you need to do to create that plan. And then my colleague Hina, she just dropped a bunch of links in the chat, and we've created a voting plan document that you guys can use. So definitely recommend checking that out. I think that's going to be shared in the materials later, but we're really trying to just get all of those resources, all of those links you've heard about and seen in one place for you. And then from a language assistance point of view, like I said, this may not necessarily apply to everybody here, but you may know somebody who does need that help, and that does exist. So don't hesitate to check that out. And we're consistently trying to find more resources because we know that that is an issue. In 2016, about 1/3 of Asian American voters were low English proficiency, and that's a big deal when you're trying to log your vote. So this is really important. And then step 3 is just cast your vote. And like we've talked about, there are so many different options. Choose your option. Make sure you you cross all your T's and dot all your I's, as has been mentioned. Can't emphasize that enough because we want to make sure every vote counts. That is one of the biggest reasons why South Asians Vote was founded. We want to get everybody voting, and we want it all to count. And so definitely recommend you check out our website. We also, at the bottom of our page, if you want to get involved or you want to figure out other ways to do things that aren't necessarily specifically with a partisan group, or just trying to figure other things out with regards to the election, we're going to have a ton of research and additional information on our website, including you know, ways to volunteer with us, and also just ways to spread the word with your friends and family.
Thank you so much, Nandini. We really, really appreciate you coming in and all the awesome links. So awesome. We're going to move on to the Jikaria Sisters, and we're going to talk with them just for a moment about strategic voter registration, things like swing state votes, and voter suppression. So if you guys can unmute yourselves.
Awesome.
Hi, got it? Omika? Okay, Omika, she got it.
Hi, I'm Ash from the Jikaria Sisters. Just want to give a quick shout out to Desi Blue for starting this amazing talk and mobilizing the South Asian youth vote. I think this is a really exciting and empowering conversation, and it really gives me the power to have my voice heard. So I'm currently a college student, and like Kajal earlier said, this is also my first presidential election that I'm eligible to vote in, and that just goes to say that if you aren't old enough or you know someone who isn't old enough to vote yet, there are so many ways to contribute. For example, volunteering at poll sites, reaching out to local representatives, just having those driving conversations with friends and family, and being proactive so that you know what to do when you are old enough. And then I just want to quickly touch on that it's really important that it's not just a presidential election. There's so many other people on the ballot, including senators and House Representatives. So make sure you do your research early and make sure you know what you're doing before you go to the polls. And now I'm going to quickly pass it over to Rish to talk more about student voter suppression.
Thank you, Aashika. Hi, everyone. I'm Rish from the Jikaria Sisters. It's really great to meet you all, albeit virtually. I want to start off by saying that any increase in voter turnout rates for various quote unquote minority demographics has the power to determine and change the outcome of this election. And this includes South Asians, specifically the South Asian youth. Students at colleges and universities like yourselves have the ability to reach a broad audience to facilitate the critical discourse necessary about our civic duties this year. However, students are facing legal, administrative, and even non-statutory barriers to voting. So for example, there have been a reduction in the number of voting locations near college campuses and even days on which students can go to vote. There have been more stringent requirements for the types of IDs that are required to vote, and there are even limited or a lack of free parking at voting sites. So this means that we need to do our research so that we are prepared and that these barriers don't hinder our ability to vote this November. Essentially, don't wait around for an infographic on Instagram to tell you what you should be focusing on or to compel you to take action. There are steps that we can take starting tonight or even tomorrow. First, think about contacting your local elections office and asking them for the pertinent details you may need before election day. So this includes when poll sites are opening, whether there's free parking, what restrictions may be in place because of COVID. Second, once you have this information, share it with your friends, family, and peers. Share the information, hold them accountable, and check in on them. Make sure that they know what they're doing with this information and that they are also able to act on the information that you're giving them. Third, specifically for college and even high school students, I would urge you to encourage your administrations to cancel classes on election day. Although that might be a stretch, you can also urge your administrations to have teachers pre-record lectures so that you don't have to physically be in class on election day. You can watch your lectures at your own time, and that way you can be present and be willing to help and ready to go on election day. And the final thing that I really urge you all to do is to stay up to date on the state voting law. So I'll actually go ahead and send this link in the chat. The Brennan Center for Justice has a great link where they update state voting laws. And although it's not an exhaustive list, it's a great place to start so that you can then figure out what's happening in the specific state that you're planning on voting in, and you can stay up to date with what's happening there. So given that, I want to pass it over to Omika. She will talk a little bit more about voting strategically and specifically in swing states.
Awesome, thank you, Rishika. Hey guys, so I want to quickly touch on swing state voting, which I know many of you may be familiar with, but something that you may not know is that if you go to college or studying in a state outside of your resident state, you might actually be able to register to vote and have your vote counted in that swing state, which could obviously be could be more impactful than voting in a state that is already blue. So you can check that out. Obviously, you have your Arizonas, Colorados, Florida, all of that, and you can check and see if you can register to vote in your swing state. And then when you maybe move out of state or move back to your home state, you can always change your voter registration. So that's just something to keep in mind. We hear a lot about swing states, but I also want to mention that even if you do live in a blue state or can only register to vote in a blue state or even a red state, it still matters and you should still vote in those states because you're going to be voting down ballot as we talked about, and your vote will still count. So great if you can register to vote in a swing state, if that's an option to you, especially if you maybe are temporarily living in one. But if you're not able to do that, still vote anyway, and then make sure that you are getting your family members to vote in those circumstances as well. So that's a little bit about strategic voting and also about student voter suppression. So I hope that was helpful.
Thank you guys so much. As somebody who keeps harassing my mom, my aunts, and everybody else in my extended family about what their voting plan is, I really, really appreciate you guys telling us how to get the vote out in swing states. I am going to move along to our next group, which is the Indian Matchmaking Cast. Super, super excited to have you guys on, and I'm going to pass it over to Aparna, Manisha, Manisha and Shekar to discuss why the Generation Z and Millennial vote is so important in this particular election.
Hey guys, thank you so much for having me on here. It is such a privilege to talk to you guys and kind of connect with you. It is beyond important to get involved and empower those who may be intimidated by the process or whose voices have been overlooked in the past. As South Asians, we've traditionally been a quiet voting bloc, but this is our time now. And it's not only important to hone in on our opportunities to make changes, we're seeing states that weren't previously swing states all of a sudden come to the forefront of being able to really make change and really facilitate a tide in this election. The Gen Z demographic is crucial. As a former Hillary delegate from Ohio, I ran to become a delegate at the age of, in rural Southern Ohio at the age of 21. So I can personally attest that not only is this presidential election crucial, but all politics are local. Just to kind of touch on my experiences, Hillary lost Ohio, a traditional swing state, by 4 votes per county in the last election. That's huge. And we're seeing states like Georgia and Texas. Texas has 38 electoral college votes, and they're becoming swing states now. So that'll make every bit of a difference. And we're also seeing traditional swing states, specifically in the Rust Belt, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, now all of a sudden become vulnerable. So, you know, things are changing. And how can you make things change? Don't just vote. We're also a swing demographic, and we need to remember that. And so swing demographics and swing states, talk to your friends, aunties and uncles, knock on doors, make phone calls, host coffees and lunches, and give presentations, donate, do whatever you can, given your unique talents and gifts to contribute to this wave. Those aunties and uncles who may still be in between, those are key conversations to have. And often they don't think that their vote matters, especially in places like Illinois, where I live now. I live in Cook County, Illinois, which is pretty much going Democrat. But still, like I said, all politics are local and everyone's vote needs to make a difference. And so with that, thank you so much for having me on board. I'm going to pass it on to Aparna now.
Yeah, I totally agree with Shekar. I mean, he said it so well. We, Gen Z and millennials as a group are definitely one of the largest groups of eligible voters right now. And they're also the least mobilized. They're the ones showing up the least to the polls. I mean, I'm in awe of this racially and ethnically diverse group. It's never been seen before. I want to say 55% are still traditional white, identify themselves as traditionally white, but the other 45% are made up of Black and Asian and people who identify as mixed race. And this is the group that we really need to mobilize at this point. I'm an immigrant myself. I could not vote until I became American, which was when I was 22. And so for 4 years, I literally canvassed and waited for my own chance to vote. I take it that seriously. And I am one of those immigrants that's voting for myself. And a lot of you are children of immigrants. And we need our voices heard as a community, as a collective, and it's kind of our duty as these children of immigrants, or in my case, as an immigrant, to have that voice heard. So, you know, get that plan together, get your community involved, have your own voice heard, and do your best to get involved in the whole process. If you can go out there on election day safely, please do that. Otherwise, do the best that you can from your home. And I'll pass it to Manisha.
Thanks, Aparna and Shekar. I'm just so proud of my castmates for talking about these really, really important issues. You know, we all put our dating lives out there, and this is, I would say, if not the most important thing that we could talk about this year. You know, in raw numbers, just to give you guys some statistics, because I'm a big numbers person, there are more than 23 million eligible Gen Z voters this year. And that's 16 million more than could vote in the 2016 election. So really, you can make a difference. Don't think that you can't make a difference. Like Aparna and Shekar mentioned, there's plenty of ways to get involved. You don't only have to go vote. Yes, definitely voting is really important, but you can also call. Phone banks are set up every single day, I think, until election day. So get involved with those efforts. The other thing to remember is that you guys have an impact. I'm part of the millennial, but I always am in awe with the Gen Z, whether it's through your TikTok videos or whether it's through having something more impactful on Instagram. I think you guys have a large voice that can be heard, use that voice, because we need you. We need you to save our country. So I'll just quickly, recap that again. You guys have the power to vote and make a difference in this election. Please, please, please use that power. Have your friends use that power. Yes, it's uncomfortable to sometimes have these conversations about voting, about things like Black Lives Matter, but uncomfortable conversations are what causes change. If we didn't go on a dating show, nobody would have talked about colorism, maybe. I don't know. I mean, you need to have these conversations whether or not, they're uncomfortable. So again, just please vote. Please tell your friends to vote. Tell your family members. Post it on your Instagram stories every single day. Feroza, when you were talking about harassing your family members, we had an Indian matchmaking reunion call the other day, and as each person came in, I was like, are you registered to vote? Are you registered to vote? I mean, yeah, it gets old, but it makes a difference. So just sound like a broken record until November 3rd. There's like 34 days left. Just do it.
100%. Thank you guys so much. Can we get a Zoom, round of applause? I know it's virtual, for all of our amazing, distinguished guests, dancers, celebrities, activists, advocates, and amazing people that they put together, but more so for our amazing group at Desi Blue, who put together this wonderful group of panelists for us today. I am going to ask you to use your vote just as Manisha was just mentioning. Write postcards, phone bank, 280,000 cards. I have about 3,000 on my front porch where people are coming up and picking them up and writing them. We have another Asian organization doing 10,000 postcards out in 8 different languages to Asian voters of all different kinds of backgrounds. So there's just a million ways you can get involved. And please use the hashtag Desi Voting Challenge, post a selfie and talk about why you're voting. And I'm going to turn this back over really quick to our team at Desi Blue so they can go through some of the questions that have come up throughout the call.
All right, everyone, can we just thank Feroza really quick for doing an amazing job moderating, and all of the 17 speakers that we had today. Thank you guys so much for taking your time out of your day and coming to this pre-game for the debate, like getting hyped up out there. I know the debate is going to be very interesting, but happy to see that. So right now, how about all of us take 1 quick minute and write down 5 names of people that we're going to contact after this call, and then we can put it up to the screen and take a screenshot or something of everyone that we're going to contact. I know we've already reached out to a lot of people, but think of 5 new people if you can. Let's take a minute to do that and come back at 5:53.
All right, we can actually go ahead and turn our cameras on and hold up the list of who you plan to call. I see Shomer's got his, Vinny's got his list, Farhan, Harry, Nandini. Awesome. If you're still working on yours, yeah. Amazing. Just think about how, just the ways that we can amplify our impact, right? Each of us is connected to hundreds of thousands of people, and to hunter for engaging our communities. So thanks so much. All right, Pradyusha, I'm gonna pass it to you.
Excited to say that we've collaborated with the sticker designer for this event. And so we have a sticker for you all today. I'll play a quick video of it on how to buy it from her shop. Her name is Roshni, so support South Asian artists. And the sticker looks like that. Our vote matters, and it's specifically made for this event. So let's go and support her. I'll put the links in the chat below. And yeah, I think that is about it. We have a couple closing remarks. Thank you all for coming out today. We really appreciate taking time right before the debate to come out. And I'll hand it off to Ananya and Simi to finish it off.
Do we want to play a Lokes video? Do we have time to do that?
We do have time to do that. We can do that.
I'm just gonna go ahead and thanks everyone for coming out today. As you can see, this is a QR code that will lead you to a little more information about Desi Blue. We have a lot of volunteering opportunities for people who have been inspired by this event or just in general. We do a lot of phone banking and text banking, and especially for young people, it's great to get involved. And yeah, definitely check out the debate after this. It should be really interesting and hopefully motivating for us to, again, register to vote, get our communities registered to vote.
Hey everyone, it's Alok. I'm so thrilled to team up with the folks at Desi Blue to encourage voter participation among South Asian youth this upcoming election cycle. Even though Asian Americans constitute one of the fastest growing demographics in this country, unfortunately, our voter participation rates aren't really the best. This is an issue because issues that are unique to our community often aren't addressed. As a trans Indian person in this upcoming election, I'm thinking a lot about the status of immigrant rights, the status of LGBT rights, the status of women's rights, and I want to ensure that my communities are protected. So please join me in making a plan to register to vote, to show up to vote, and to vote blue in this election cycle. Thanks so much.